After years together, Jessica sat me down and said, "I don't love you anymore, but I'll still live here until I find a place." I smiled, packed my bags, and moved out that night. The shock hit me like a physical blow. 4 years together, 2 years living in what I thought was our home. And she delivered this news like she was discussing the weather. My hands trembled as I processed her words. But what stunned me more than the breakup was the casual assumption that I'd continue subsidizing her life while she figured out her next move. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd just destroyed our relationship, but expected me to provide free housing during her transition to whatever came next. I sat there staring at her, watching her scroll through her phone like she'd just asked me to pick up milk from the store. This was the woman I'd supported through job changes, family drama, and her various finding herself phases. I'd paid most of our bills, handled household maintenance, and built a comfortable life she could coast through without much effort. And now she wanted to keep all the benefits while eliminating any pretense of commitment or affection. But as the initial shock faded, something else emerged, a cold, analytical clarity I recognized from my professional life. I'm a senior systems analyst at Dataflow Solutions, specializing in identifying inefficiencies and restructuring processes for maximum effectiveness. My job involves analyzing complex systems, identifying vulnerabilities, and implementing strategic solutions that eliminate waste and optimize outcomes. As I looked at Jessica sprawled on the couch I'd bought, in the house I'd found and furnished, I began to see our entire relationship as a flawed system that needed immediate restructuring. The strategic part of my mind started cataloging advantages I'd never fully considered. This wasn't just a personal crisis. It was a situation where I held significantly more power than Jessica realized. She'd gotten comfortable treating me like the reliable foundation of her life, but foundations can be moved, and when they are, everything built on top of them tends to collapse. I realized I had about 6 hours before Jessica would expect some kind of emotional response or negotiation attempt. She was probably anticipating tears, arguments, or desperate attempts to win her back. Instead, I was going to use that time to demonstrate the difference between someone who creates value and someone who merely consumes it. The relationship was over, but the lesson was just beginning. What Jessica didn't understand was that she'd just picked a fight with someone who specialized in systematic problem-solving under pressure. My entire career was built on analyzing dysfunctional systems and implementing rapid, comprehensive solutions. I'd spent 5 years optimizing corporate structures, eliminating redundancies, and streamlining operations for companies with millions in revenue. This situation was just another inefficient system that needed immediate correction. My professional background had taught me that successful restructuring requires understanding your leverage points and your opponent's dependencies. At Dataflow Solutions, I'd led projects that eliminated entire departments when they couldn't demonstrate value. I'd restructured supply chains that saved companies hundreds of thousands annually. Most relevantly, I'd specialized in dependency analysis, identifying when one part of a system was extracting resources without contributing proportional value. Jessica had made herself completely dependent on the lifestyle I provided, while contributing almost nothing to its maintenance. She worked part-time at a boutique downtown, earning maybe $18,000 annually, barely enough to cover her car payment and shopping habits. I was pulling in $95,000 as a senior analyst, plus bonuses that typically added another $15,000 to $20,000 yearly. I'd been covering roughly 80% of our shared expenses, while she treated her income as purely discretionary spending money. More importantly, everything in our shared life was connected to my credit, my planning, and my resources. I'd found our rental house, negotiated the lease terms, and my credit score had secured the favorable rates. The furniture was mine, purchased with my savings while she was between jobs the first year we lived together. The utilities were in my name because her credit wasn't sufficient for deposits. Even our joint Netflix and streaming accounts were linked to my credit cards. She'd created a lifestyle entirely dependent on my financial foundation, then assumed she could continue enjoying it while eliminating any obligation to maintain our relationship. That wasn't just selfish, it was strategically naive. You don't announce to your primary resource provider that you're discontinuing services while expecting continued benefits. I also had something Jessica completely lacked: experience with high-stakes decision-making under pressure. In my role at Dataflow, I regularly handled million-dollar restructuring projects where delays or half measures could cost companies their competitive position. I'd learned to analyze situations quickly, identify optimal outcomes, and execute comprehensive solutions without getting derailed by emotional considerations. 2 years ago, I led the restructuring of a client's entire logistics operation when their distribution partner tried to renegotiate contracts mid-year, assuming the client was too dependent to walk away. I'd help them identify alternative partners, restructure their delivery systems, and implement new processes within 30 days. The original partner lost a $2 million annual contract and eventually filed for bankruptcy. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate someone's ability to eliminate dependencies when properly motivated. Jessica had just made the same mistake that failed distribution partner had made, assuming dependency was permanent and leverage was one-sided. She was about to discover that systems built around one person's contributions can be relocated very efficiently when that person decides to optimize for their own interests. I spent another hour mentally inventorying our shared resources and dependencies. The house lease was month to month after our initial year contract, which gave me flexibility she probably hadn't considered. My credit cards handled all our major recurring expenses. My savings account held our security deposits. My network of professional contacts included everyone from real estate agents to financial advisors who could help me restructure my entire living situation within days. Most importantly, I had documentation of everything. As a systems analyst, I automatically tracked patterns and maintained records. I had spreadsheets showing expense distributions, copies of all our shared contracts and agreements, and detailed records of every financial contribution I'd made to our shared lifestyle. Jessica, meanwhile, had no plan B. She'd never bothered building independent financial systems because she'd always had mine to rely on. Her part-time retail job couldn't support independent housing in our area. Her credit score was mediocre at best due to late payments and maxed-out store credit cards. She had no savings account, no substantial assets, and no experience managing adult responsibilities without someone else handling the complex parts. The power imbalance was overwhelming once I analyzed it objectively. She'd just declared war on the person who controlled every system that sustained her comfortable lifestyle. It was like a regional manager telling the CEO they were no longer committed to the company, but expected to keep their office and benefits during their job search. By the time Jessica finished her phone call and announced she was going to bed in our bedroom, I'd completed my situational analysis. This wasn't a relationship problem anymore. It was a strategic challenge with a clear optimal solution. She wanted to transition out of our relationship while maintaining all the benefits I provided. I was going to help her transition much faster than she'd planned, just without any of those benefits. The efficiency expert in me was actually impressed by the elegance of what I was about to implement. Complete system restructuring, elimination of ineffective components, and optimization of resource allocation for maximum personal benefit. Jessica had provided the perfect catalyst for a comprehensive life upgrade. Over the next 18 hours, I executed the most efficient relationship restructuring of my career. This wasn't emotional revenge. It was systematic optimization with professional-level precision. First, I contacted Marcus Webb, a real estate agent I'd worked with on corporate relocations at Dataflow. Marcus specialized in rapid housing solutions for executives facing sudden relocations, and he owed me a favor after I'd referred him 3 high-end corporate clients last year. When I explained my situation, his response was immediate. "Alex, I've got a furnished 1-bedroom downtown that just opened up. Corporate lease ended early, so it's available immediately. Owner's asking $2,100 monthly, but for a year commitment, I can get you $1,850 and waive the deposits." Within 2 hours, I'd toured the apartment, submitted applications, and received approval. The unit was actually an upgrade. 10th floor with river views, in-unit laundry, and a building gym. More importantly, it was available for immediate occupancy, and Marcus could handle all the paperwork electronically. While that was processing, I called Jennifer Liu, my financial advisor, who handled both personal and corporate accounts for several Dataflow clients. Jennifer had helped me optimize my investment portfolio last year, and she understood strategic financial planning. When I explained the situation, she was fascinated by the logistics challenge. "Alex, this is actually brilliant from a financial perspective," she said after reviewing my expense analysis. "You've been subsidizing a lifestyle that provided no return on investment. Eliminating that dependency will free up approximately $1,400 monthly in discretionary income, plus you'll qualify for the single occupancy tax benefits on your new place." Jennifer helped me restructure my entire financial footprint within hours. New bank accounts separate from any shared access, updated direct deposits, and revised automatic payments that eliminated Jessica from all my financial systems. She even helped me calculate the total cost of supporting Jessica's lifestyle, approximately $28,000 annually in direct subsidies, not counting the opportunity costs of my restricted financial flexibility. Most importantly, Jennifer confirmed what I'd suspected. Jessica had no legal claim to any of our shared assets since we weren't married, and everything was purchased with my income and credit. "She's essentially renting lifestyle benefits from you," Jennifer explained. "When you terminate the arrangement, she has no standing to demand continued access." Then I made the most crucial call. David Brennan, my corporate attorney who handled Dataflow's contract negotiations. David had helped me understand leverage and strategic timing in complex business situations, and he immediately grasped the relationship dynamics involved. "Alex, this is textbook dependency restructuring," he said after I explained the situation. "She's announcing service termination while expecting continued benefits. In corporate terms, that's breach of contract with demands for ongoing compensation. You have every right to eliminate the arrangement immediately." David helped me understand the legal landscape around shared living situations. Since the lease was in both our names, but I'd paid all deposits and most rent, I could legally terminate my involvement with 30 days' notice to the landlord. More importantly, since Jessica had never contributed meaningfully to our shared assets, she had no claim to furniture, electronics, or anything else I'd purchased. "The key is clean documentation and rapid execution," David advised. "Give her clear notice of your departure, fulfill your legal obligations, and then completely disconnect from the shared systems. Don't negotiate, don't compromise, and don't provide transition assistance beyond what's legally required." David also confirmed something crucial. Jessica's casual assumption that she could continue living in our place was legally baseless. Without my income supporting the rent, she'd need to either qualify for the lease independently or find alternative housing. Given her limited income and poor credit, neither option was realistically viable. Armed with professional guidance from 3 different experts, I spent the rest of that day implementing what I privately called Operation Independence. The goal was complete separation of all shared systems within 24 hours, executed with professional precision that left no room for negotiation or manipulation. I started with financial disconnection. I removed Jessica as an authorized user on all my credit cards, canceled our joint Netflix and Amazon accounts, and requested final bills for all utilities in preparation for service transfer. I opened new accounts for everything: banking, streaming services, insurance, that had no connection to our shared history. Next, I coordinated the physical transition. Marcus had confirmed same-day move-in availability for my new apartment, and he'd arranged a moving service that could handle furniture transport within hours. I cataloged everything in our current place, identifying what I'd purchased versus what Jessica owned. The results were stark. Approximately 85% of our household belongings were mine, including all major furniture, electronics, and appliances. Most importantly, I documented everything: photos of serial numbers on electronics I'd bought, receipts for major purchases, credit card statements showing who paid for what. I created a comprehensive record that would eliminate any potential disputes about asset ownership. The timeline was aggressive but achievable: complete financial separation by evening, physical relocation the following day, and total system disconnection within 48 hours. Jessica would wake up to discover that her comfortable lifestyle had been completely restructured around her absence. I also prepared responses for the emotional manipulation I expected. Based on my analysis of her behavioral patterns, Jessica would likely attempt guilt-based appeals, promises to work things out, and eventually anger when she realized I wasn't negotiating. Having dealt with similar tactics in corporate restructuring situations, I knew the key was maintaining professional detachment and refusing to engage with emotional arguments. By midnight, the financial restructuring was complete. By the following evening, I'd be completely independent of any shared systems with Jessica. She'd announced her departure from our relationship. I was simply optimizing the timeline for maximum efficiency. The beauty of the plan was its complete reversibility. If Jessica had second thoughts and wanted to rebuild our relationship on more balanced terms, all these changes could theoretically be undone. But if she was serious about moving on, she'd discover exactly what that transition looked like when the person who'd been supporting her lifestyle moved on first. Either way, I'd never again be in a position where someone could casually announce they didn't love me while expecting continued access to the life I'd built. That system had been permanently optimized out of existence. The consequences began immediately and escalated exactly as my analysis had predicted. Within hours of implementing my strategic separation, Jessica discovered that comfortable lifestyles require ongoing maintenance from someone with resources and skills. The first crisis hit at the day after I'd moved out. Jessica called, her voice tight with panic. "Alex, the internet isn't working, and I have a video call with my manager this morning." I calmly explained that I'd canceled our shared service and transferred my new connection to my downtown apartment. She'd need to establish her own account if she wanted internet access. "But that takes days to set up," she protested. "Can't you just keep it running until I figure this out?" I reminded her that she'd announced her intention to move out and find her own place. Managing utilities was part of that process. She hung up without another word. By 10 a.m., she'd discovered that our Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime accounts were no longer accessible. Her Instagram story that morning showed her at a coffee shop, laptop open, clearly working from a location with free Wi-Fi. She was already adapting to the reality that her digital lifestyle required someone to pay for it. The financial pressure mounted systematically. Jessica's boutique job, which had seemed adequate when she only needed to cover discretionary spending, suddenly had to support rent, utilities, food, and basic living expenses. The math was unforgiving. $18,000 annually couldn't support independent housing in our area, especially with her poor credit limiting her rental options. Within a week, she'd cycled through 3 different temporary housing arrangements. First, she'd stayed with her friend Megan, but that lasted only 3 days before Megan mentioned that Jessica needed to figure out something more permanent. Then she'd tried her cousin's place across town, but the commute to her part-time job made that unsustainable. Marcus had been tracking the rental applications in our old building through his professional network. "Alex, Jessica submitted an application to take over your lease independently," he reported during our weekly call. "The landlord denied her immediately. Her income doesn't meet the minimum requirements, and her credit score disqualifies her for the rent level." The landlord had given her 30 days to either find a qualified co-signer or vacate the property. Since Jessica had never bothered building relationships with people who had stable finances, finding someone willing to co-sign a lease for her was proving impossible. Meanwhile, my own situation had improved dramatically. The downtown apartment was everything Marcus had promised: better location, superior amenities, and actually cheaper than splitting our previous rent because I'd removed the Jessica subsidy from my budget. My commute to Dataflow had shortened by 15 minutes, and I was saving approximately $1,200 monthly by eliminating shared expenses that primarily benefited her. More importantly, my professional performance had improved. Without the constant background stress of managing Jessica's financial crises and emotional demands, I was more focused and strategic at work. David Kellerman, Dataflow's CEO, had noticed the change during our quarterly review. "Alex, you seem more decisive lately. That restructuring proposal you submitted for the Hartwell account was exceptional, exactly the kind of strategic thinking that drives results." The contrast with Jessica's declining situation was striking. While my optimized lifestyle was exceeding expectations, her attempt to maintain appearances without foundational support was collapsing systematically. She'd started posting less frequently on social media, and when she did, the content showed clear signs of stress. Photos taken in different locations suggesting housing instability, complaints about work stress, and increasingly desperate requests for advice about apartment hunting. 2 weeks after the separation, I encountered her former colleague Rachel at a networking event. Rachel's update was illuminating. Jessica's been trying to pick up extra shifts at the boutique, but she doesn't have reliable transportation since her car payment was coming from a joint account that got closed. She's been asking everyone if they know about cheaper housing options, but honestly, her budget wouldn't work anywhere decent in this area. The systematic nature of the consequences was exactly what I'd predicted. Jessica had built her entire lifestyle around access to my resources, but she'd never developed independent capabilities. When those resources were withdrawn, she lacked the skills, credit, relationships, and income necessary to maintain anything resembling her previous comfort level. Most tellingly, she'd started reaching out to mutual friends with her version of events, but the response wasn't what she'd expected. People were asking logical questions about why she'd expected to continue living in a place she couldn't afford after ending the relationship with the person who made it financially viable. Her narrative of being abandoned wasn't resonating when the basic mathematics of the situation were considered. The final confirmation came 3 weeks later when Marcus called with news. Jessica's officially out of your old place. Landlord said she tried to negotiate some kind of payment plan, but ultimately she couldn't make the numbers work. She's cleared out completely, left yesterday. 6 months later, the transformation was complete and irreversible. My strategic restructuring had succeeded beyond my initial projections. Jessica had eventually found housing in a converted duplex 20 minutes outside town, sharing space with 2 roommates and paying $650 monthly for a room barely larger than our old walk-in closet. She'd been forced to sell her car and rely on public transportation, which limited her employment options to businesses within walking distance of bus routes. The boutique had eliminated her position due to frequent tardiness caused by transportation issues, and she'd taken a job at a chain restaurant where her scheduling flexibility was severely restricted. Most significantly, she'd been forced to develop basic adult skills that she'd never needed while I was managing our shared life. She was now handling her own billing, managing household responsibilities, and learning to budget on a genuinely limited income. The process had been difficult, but it had also eliminated her ability to coast through life on someone else's resources. Her social media presence had shifted dramatically. Gone were the carefully curated lifestyle posts, showcasing designer items and upscale restaurants. Instead, her content focused on budget-friendly finds and simple living tips, which was actually more authentic than her previous image management. Meanwhile, my own situation had exceeded every optimization goal I'd set. The money I'd previously spent subsidizing Jessica's lifestyle had been redirected into aggressive investment strategies that Jennifer had recommended. My portfolio had grown by $31,000 over 6 months, and my improved cash flow had allowed me to qualify for premium investment packages previously beyond my reach. Professionally, the transformation had been equally dramatic. Without relationship drama consuming mental bandwidth, I'd spearheaded 2 major corporate restructuring projects that had impressed Dataflow's executive team. David Kellerman had promoted me to principal systems analyst with a $22,000 salary increase and equity participation in company profits. My personal life had also improved substantially. The downtown apartment had connected me to a professional social circle I'd never accessed while managing Jessica's needs and limitations. I'd joined the building's fitness center, started attending networking events, and was dating Emma, a corporate attorney who understood demanding careers and ambitious goals. Marcus had transitioned from service provider to friend, regularly joining me for networking events and introducing me to other professionals in his circle. Jennifer had become my primary financial strategist, helping me build wealth at a pace that would have been impossible while supporting Jessica's lifestyle. David continued providing legal guidance for both personal and professional situations, and his firm had become Dataflow's preferred legal partner, partly due to our successful collaboration. Most importantly, I'd gained strategic confidence that extended well beyond this situation. Demonstrating my ability to analyze complex personal dynamics and implement comprehensive solutions under pressure had reinforced my professional capabilities. I'd proven to myself that the same analytical skills that drove corporate success could optimize any system, including relationships that had become dysfunctional. Jessica eventually reached out via social media with a message that confirmed the lesson's completion. Alex, I know I handled things badly. I didn't understand how much you were contributing to our life together, and I'm sorry for taking that for granted. I hope you're doing well." I appreciated the acknowledgement, but didn't respond. The situation was resolved, and revisiting it served no strategic purpose. The entire experience had validated my analytical approach to personal challenges. Jessica had assumed emotional manipulation would override practical considerations, but systematic planning and professional execution had produced optimal outcomes for everyone involved. She'd learned to build independent capabilities. I'd optimized my life around my actual priorities, and both of us had moved forward to more sustainable situations that reflected our actual contributions and capabilities.